Gridmaster comes out in less than a couple of weeks at the time of writing this script. For those unaware, Gridmaster is a temporary game mode featuring boosted EXP, buffs in the form of unlocks after completing tiles and rows, and auto-completed quest lines. It will run for 4 weeks, and it's been called a mini-league, and I'm inclined to agree with the characterization. This video is going to be a bit different than my last two, as it'll be just a short collection of tips for getting the most out of the Gridmaster experience. 1. Set an early goal for yourself. This applies to old school RuneScape broadly speaking, but I think it also applies to temporary game modes. That goal doesn't need to be complete the grid, as some tasks may very well be very time intensive, and may not actually be that fun to fully go for. Instead, I advise going for something more simple. Like, to use leagues as an example, a lot of players would use this to go ahead and establish some sort of PVM goal, and then use it to learn a new piece of content. Alternatively, it could be fun to mess around with some incredibly overpowered builds. Such examples include the Door build from Leagues 4, as well as a Max Mage Berserker build in Leagues 4, as well as unusual things you might not expect, like Ranged Tank build in Leagues 5 due to the 100% accuracy. You can just walk around in full Justy. A great thing about Gridmaster is you don't actually have to pick specific regions. You're going to have access to the entire map right off the bat, so you don't have to worry about potentially locking yourself out of another build. But it's still a good idea to look at specific rows, tiles, and columns to see if there's an ability that you want to mess around with, and what a good goal to set for yourself is, so that way you have something you're constantly working towards, regardless if that's a specific boss or some sort of raid. 2, and I'd argue this is a pretty big one, don't be afraid to try new content. Temporary game modes are the best way to do that. You advance incredibly quickly, you have boosted drop rates, and you have new abilities that will allow you to take down bosses in no time at all. You'll still need to learn the mechanics of things like raids and higher level PPM, but I can personally tell you there are loads of people, including myself, who would be more than happy to take you on learner raids or group boss encounters in temporary game modes. Admittedly, I find it funny to see people plank on super basic stuff. 3. Thou shalt not underestimate questing for early EXP. Normally in leagues you want to get a couple EXP multiplier tiers before you go all in on questing. It's questionable if we'll have something like that in this league. Though if I were a betting man, I'd say Equilibrium is bound to be the boost most likely to come back. But even simple quests like Witch's Potion or Witch's House can give EXP drops, which give your account so much more combat potential very early on when you take into account the multipliers. While some are bound to be auto-completed like Prereqs for Song of the Elves, there are others that are just kinda there that will let you skip early levels. 4. Don't feel like you have to follow a script. In other words, don't fall into the trap of efficiency. This is something that can sometimes be a trap for newer players in my opinion. There are plenty of great creators that theorycraft plans for how they're going to spend the first hour or so when servers go live for max efficiency. Heck, I even made my own version that got my account in a position to AFK fish while I worked back during Leagues 5. They're great resources, but you by no means have to follow this. If you'd rather explore on your own, like a lot of WoW migrants have been doing, by all means go for it. As the old saying goes, there's no wrong way to play old school RuneScape. Except Ultimate Iron Man. You guys are masochists. With that said, I do plan to come out with a guide to rush shamans for the combatant perk, so maybe keep an eye out for that if you do choose to play that way, but again, by no means do you have to. 5. Hail Crab! Okay, this one more broadly is to have an AFK option for when you're not sure what you're going to do next. This can be shooting stars, this can be chopping high-level trees, and of course, crab. This is particularly good if you work remotely and want to have it running during meetings and stuff, but obviously I know not everyone has that luxury. 6. Make sure you have a variety of content to do. It's easy to get burnt out if you just do the same thing over and over and over, and what was I saying? And just like that, you've lost sight of why you're doing it. There may be some longer grinds for sure, but if you find yourself getting bored of a specific task, move on to something else, even if it's a bit less efficient prior to a given drop. This kinda goes back to the efficiency thing I was mentioning earlier. 7. Enjoy theory crafting for theory crafting's sake. This is honestly half of the fun of leagues, especially in the lead up to it where you're only given small amounts of info. When a new announcement comes out, sometimes that completely changes your plans and you start again. It's such a good time, I highly recommend it. In fact, when I was about to start recording this, we had our first reveal. I was so distracted by theory crafting with my plan, I didn't start recording this for a couple of hours. And so those are my 7 tips that I'd recommend following to give yourself a good start while making sure that you're still having fun and doing the content that you want to do. Be sure to leave a comment with any other theory crafting ideas that you might have, and let me know if there are any other recommendations I might not have thought of. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.